Arthur Joseph, welcome to the podcast.
Welcome.
Thanks for being with us.
Thanks, team.
I'll just get you to hold your... Yeah, wonderful. How are you today?
I'm superb.
Perfect.
Not perfect, just superb.
Okay.
Because I don't believe in perfect, I believe in excellence.
Okay, wonderful.
I know it's just a phrase, but whatever.
So we've come... Sorry.
Well, I was going to say, where did that idea come from about perfection and excellence?
Perfect doesn't let us make mistakes because we're not perfect enough. Excellence understands that mistakes are part of the journey. And so it's really quite important.
Yeah.
I teach mastery. My art form is voice, but it's a metaphor. I'm a classical singer by training. I have a master's in voice. But what I'm really teaching is mastery through communication. The quality of a breath, the sound of a voice, the way we tell our story, body language. In all forms of mastery, mastery is only achieved when you integrate mind, body, spirit. We know that. And if you read in any of my books, articles, I always write mind, body, spirit with slash lines, no ands, no commas. Because in vocal awareness, it's what I refer to as the Trinity. It's 3 in 1. One doesn't happen. It's not a linear experience. It's whole. So mastery is only achieved when you integrate mind, body, spirit. We know that. I train a lot of really unique people. And this is my 53rd year of vocal awareness, so I've been on this journey for some time. And among these people that I teach are luminaries in sports, politics, arts, and letters. In the U.S., I have at least 20 people, 20 men in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, for example. Basketball, legendary athletes like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Irvin Magic Johnson that we know all over the world. In politics, one of my students just became U.S. Senator from Arizona, a Democrat in a red state. And if you look at her campaign video, it's all vocal awareness with me sitting right there with her. Because the goal is, I don't want to see the work, but without the work, I'm not going to see you. So I say to all these athletes in the first lesson, you bring your talent or gift to your sport, whatever that sport is. But someone literally teaches you every single thing you do. But who teaches us how to be ourselves while others watch? That's vocal awareness.
Do you find there is a common moment in people's lives before they reach out to you?
What an interesting question. Do you feel the quality of the energy of this room has shifted, by the way? Have you noticed?
Yeah, I do.
How did that happen? It's the work, capital W. It's what I'm doing. People come to me for all types of reasons. There isn't one single reason. Or they might come here for a perceived reason, but when we get into the work, we discover subtext. This work is my passion. When you give me your voice, you give me who you are. That relationship is sacrosanct. Sociologists tell us the greatest fear in society is public speaking. That's been the old saw for 4 to 5 generations. It's completely bogus. Not true at all. But that's the bill of goods. And I make a big deal about it because it aggravates me. The greatest fear are actually two fears, which also comes back to your question, Chris. Fear of abandonment and ownership of my power. Claiming who I am without approbation. When I hold my breath, when I look away, when I wonder what you're thinking, which I'm never going to know because I can't read your mind, I'm in the white noise. I'm not there for me. Or we get all these mixed messages our entire lives. Oh, don't act like that. What will people think? You shouldn't say that. You sound arrogant. So if I say to you guys, vocal awareness is extraordinary work, it can help you change your life in moments. Now you would hope I'd acknowledge that's stupid and arrogant. But if I say in response, vocal awareness is extraordinary work, it can help you change your life in moments. That's not arrogant. That's my truth. So the recognition in vocal awareness is that voice is power. Not a big bombastic voice, a genuine, earnest, and authentic voice. So in vocal awareness, Henry Miller calls man an onion with a million skins. And we peel back the layers to discover what's possible. But my commitment is never to make someone into somebody they're not, or to create an Arthur clone. That would be completely inappropriate. I want to help them discover how to bring out what is possible. So it begins with, what is your vision? Why are you here? What is your brand? Your persona statement is what I call this. The root of the word persona is an Etruscan root word, an ancient Greek dialect. Phersu, P-H-E-R-S-U, which literally means through the sound. One's identity is largely conveyed through the sound of a voice and an opinion created in 3 seconds. Perception, reality. So we answer 2 questions accompanied by 2 drawings in this exercise. How do I believe I'm presently perceived? And a drawing that reflects that. How would I ideally like to be known? Not perceived, known to myself, in a drawing that reflects that. So then that becomes our template. And my responsibility then becomes how to embody that. In the arts, athletics, profound spiritual pursuits, one is in mastery in their skill set, if they've worked long and hard. Then when they leave the discipline, they're normal again. In vocal awareness, there is no off switch. Because this work isn't only about what you do, it is about who you are. In vocal awareness, I teach it's not just the message, but the messenger. It's not just what we say, but how we say it. If I disrupt my narrative for a moment and I say, I'm really happy to be here with you today. Thank you so much for having me on your show. Now that's not appropriate. I don't trust that guy. But why? We don't recognize that the pitch is too high or the voice too fast. It's really nice to be on your show today. Thank you for inviting me to be on this podcast. That's our 18-month-old, 90-pound Doberman puppy named Dodger in the background there, wanting to be inside with us. But so we don't factor in the what is causing that disruption, or why do I recognize that as more viable? And that's the point. So I teach us how to be who we are through the techniques of this work, never to present who we are. In my last book, Vocal Leadership, 7 Minutes a Day to Communication Mastery, McGraw-Hill did a wonderful job with index and tables of contents, and let me just do whatever I want. It was really quite lovely. In the back of the book is a glossary of root sources. We look up the root of the word intimate. What is more intimate than our voice? Revealing who we are. Intimus, it means intrinsic or essential. It's intrinsic to be who we are, essential that we must be who we are, but we don't even know what that means. And if we did, do we know how to access that? We look up the word present, presentation. To introduce formally, to bring before the public. We look up the word perform or performance, to carry out, fulfill, to do. We simply misconstrued the interpretations of these words because we've been fed a bill of goods that says performance is inauthentic. Presenting is being real, when in point of fact it's quite the opposite. Because when we present, we're unconsciously seeking approval. From who? What if I try to please you, Chris, and you have another POV? Now I can't serve two masters, and there's already an implied artificiality, because I'm trying to get you to like what I'm saying and doing. And yet these are schools of training that say you need to blend with your audience, or somebody speaking quickly, you need to speak quickly to create a bonding opportunity. Why? How contrived, how manipulative is that?
Where did this bridge come from? You were a singer, and then obviously the power of the voice is incredibly important with singing. But how did it start this idea to help other people? Because singing's seen as it's seen as a performance, and it's someone that stands up and performs to other people, and they're put on a pedestal, and you've kind of come right down to other people to raise them up. It sort of seems unusual and blindingly obvious, the power of the voice, and we don't even pay much respect to it.
I knew when I was 4 that music was my life. At 12, I auditioned for choir. At 11, I auditioned for choir, but I couldn't sing America the Beautiful on pitch, so the teacher didn't let me in her choir. At 12, I auditioned for my 7th grade teacher. Whether I could sing in tune or not was not relevant to her. And she let me in her choir, and I knew at 12 that singing was the direction my musical life was to take me. We all have our stories. One of God's gifts to me was my first voice teacher, Mrs. Julia Kinsel. And I'm not going to exaggerate this behavior. This is the truth. I'm 15 years old, and Mrs. Kinsel is 75. In the middle of my lessons, I say, "Stop! No, I don't want to do it like that. I hear it this way." Manically clamping my hands to my ears like that all the time. And she allowed that behavior. She knew something about me I didn't yet know. I hear vocal sound, unlike any human being I've ever met on the planet. When I hear a voice, I hear you. It's what I call perfect pitch, though I can't recognize D from B flat anymore without a lot of concentration. But I get a complete imprint. Just goes right in. And Mrs. Kinsel's lack of dogma helped me create new form. Vocal awareness is a paradigm shift. It's trademarked. It's copyrighted. Empowerment through voice, trademarked. My work copyrighted globally. And I'm proud of that because it's original thought. And the Trademark Copyright Office says, you get to keep that stuff. And I've always had what I've referred to as a knowing. When I first began teaching, I certainly didn't have all this intellectual knowledge and voice science acumen that I clearly have now, but I still had the intuition. And so I ask a student to do something, and it works. But then I didn't want to just have it be that. I needed to empirically understand. So I went and studied it in voice science, psychologically, et cetera, et cetera. So it would be grounded as empirically as possible. And then in college, as an undergrad, I wasn't a music education major because, quote unquote, I was never going to teach. And I remember clearly walking down hallways saying this to myself all the time, and knowing as I said it, I was not telling myself the truth. It's as though God already had the plan and I was just too arrogant or intimidated or whatever to want to honor that. I love singing. I just got to sing at a godson's wedding a couple of months ago. Singing is the most hedonistic thing there is to do. We do it because it feels good. Oh, and then like me and pay me. But initially the calling is it feels good, and it's completely primal. What is a nursing infant often doing while it is nursing? It is humming. So singing is primal. And I have whole lectures on that. So I had a calling. And singing wasn't enough for me. I knew I was being called to create something very special. I didn't know what it was. But I have 7 rituals in vocal awareness. We can discuss them at some point if you choose. Key principles. The name of my vision, vocal awareness. All of this was concretized in my late teens, early 20s already. It was like, going to bed one night it's on my wall over there, bottom in that black frame. I was reading Quest magazine, I believe, in 1980. It says on the cover there. And a thought wouldn't go away until it made me get up and write it down. And the only paper I had is that magazine. So that's where I scribbled the thought. Came to about 10 o'clock one night. It said, voice is the only artistic experience which is both finite and infinite at the same time. It is fallible and fragile, gone in an instant, unseen, only felt. Remembered from the past, even a long moment ago. Anticipated, sensing its future, even as its present is just occurring. It's temporal, visceral, organic. Such a complex, simple, and beguiling transcendent state. Came through just like that. I went to, around that time, invited to an institute called the Institute for the Advanced Studies of the Communication Processes. And I tested this out with some of the greatest voice scientists in the world and shared it, studied it philosophically, psychologically. And one of the things I ended up doing was substituting other words for the word voice. Life is the only artistic experience which is both finite and infinite at the same time. Or love, it is fallible and fragile, gone in an instant, unseen, only felt. And I came to understand the paradigm of vocal awareness. which is to help us live the integration of life and love through the power of our voice, through the integrity of who we are. And the 6 of the 7 rituals in vocal awareness is where I encourage people to live, which is where I strive to be at all times. Pay attention, deeper listening. Because in voice and vocal awareness in my books, you'll see voice sometimes written with a capital V, sometimes lowercase v. The lowercase v is my speaking voice, me out here. The capital V is my inner voice. So in vocal awareness, we learn to integrate both inter and intrapersonally in our communication. Part of our human condition is we tend to compartmentalize existence. We have people talking about your heart center or your this chakra or that chakra. People speak about, talk through my head. In vocal awareness, it begins with the quality of a breath. If I ask you, take a nice deep breath and exhale, and you felt your chests rise, and unbeknownst to you, your larynx and tongue are also flexing. Now if I say to you, don't take a deep breath, instead allow a slow, silent, conscious, loving breath with your eyes on me, slowly, lovingly, silently. Inhaling, allowing it deeper, 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 and exhale. And that time the chest did not rise, the intercostals, the rib cage expanded. Did you notice that?
I felt it. I couldn't have said what it was, but it felt different.
And you were calmer.
Yes.
A breath, you see, isn't only physical, it's also emotional. When we're in trauma, the first thing the body does is holds its breath. Then we may hyperventilate or something else. So in vocal awareness, this is a critical tool in helping us be in state in what I call conscious awareness. It's not just take a breath, it's allow a conscious loving breath. It's the 3rd of the 7 rituals. So this is one of the ways we take our warm-ups and all that stuff we've done in practice and apply it in real time. If I ask you to sit at attention, please. Sit erect. And notice the first thing you do is hold your breath. Now if I ask you to take your hand gracefully from 3 inches below your navel, which is where core begins, Da Vinci's Vitruvian Man comes to mind, and we gracefully pull this thread right up through the top of our head. And not just stop here, but continue pulling. Actually do it with me, gentlemen, physically. Slowly, deeper, taller, eyes on me. Through the middle, through the crown chakra. You're out here too much. And now right there, and then hand down, and stay there. Relax. That's eloquent. Now once again, notice what the first thing is the body does when I ask you to put yourselves in stature. Begin. Did you inhale? Mm-hmm. That's right. Presentation, you don't. So stature is claiming something about myself. It's the preparation for the 7 rituals. We want to always feel this thread pulling. It's never static. It's always pulling. Exactly. mastery is only achieved when we master the subtleties of form. We know this. But we don't apply that same understanding out here. I have a deep spiritual process where I'm up at 3 or 3:30 in the morning every day with 45 minutes to an hour of prayer and meditation. And I've been following this protocol for about 50 years, 51 years. I don't miss a day because it would be out of integrity. Integrity, integration, by the way, have the same root source. They mean wholeness. So the goal is to be who we are. I share that about my protocols, about my rituals, because, as I say, began with transcendental meditation through the Maharishi. He was one of the teachers, the teacher, of course. And there was this documentary on meditation a number of years ago, and many of the segments were done at Maharishi International University. I believe it's in Fairfield, Iowa. I could be wrong about that. And people speaking about consciousness unconsciously. Because their mouth is their mind out loud. In vocal awareness, that's not acceptable. And I am not at all interested in merely having us be aware or be, quote unquote, conscious. Vocal awareness is about embedding and enhancing what I call conscious awareness. It's as 360 as I know how to be. So that stature, for example, it's already dissipated, of course, but then it's a trigger, and you just tap into it and it reminds you. And so now we feel a little more grounded. You felt that. If I ask you, and for your audience, we can use different words for this understanding, to say thank you to God, but not aloud within yourself. Or we can thank the goddess, we can thank Source, we can be an atheist or an agnostic and really say thank you. But it's a moment where we acknowledge something outside our corporeal self. So if I ask you, kind men, to merely within yourself take in the thought of saying thank you to God, Source, however you want to define it. And the first thing the body does is inhale. If I ask you to stand up for a moment, and now just sit down and relax. Forget all this stature schmatcher nonsense and just kick back and really relax. And notice how you feel and notice how the room feels. And I'll be quiet for a moment. You got it? Stand in place one more time, please. And this time I don't want you to relax, nor do I want you to empirically understand what I'm about to say. Rather, don't think about whom or what, only hear the words love and let go. Feel what it might be like to love and let go. And when you choose to, sit down. And the first thing you did before you even moved, once again, was inhale. And you sat down more purposefully. And the space internally, externally are quieter. But you don't know even at all what loving and letting go means. But your unconscious does. So why is this recognition of breathing so fundamental? stature, source, love and let go, the first impulse is to breathe. It's the body's way of saying, thank you for giving me permission to be myself. I breathe to acknowledge that. Takes me out of the white noise. The root of the word spirit, spiritu, simply means to breathe. I don't want to motivate your listeners. I want to inspire them. I want to breathe into them, inspirare. The Hebrew word neshama means both soul and breath. One of the reasons I love words and root sources so much is because when that word was created, it had a true meaning by the individual who defined that word. We've lost contact with that.
Is that a Western trait, or is it global?
What a Western trait.
Well, I'd say when we've been to Japan, language seems three-dimensional. When we've been to India, language seems three-dimensional. My partner's Persian. Their language seems three-dimensional. English seems quite a flat, everything's been compressed, and words are used in place of, you use the word inhale. My mum would want to say, well, she would say, take a deep breath. And when I think about taking a deep breath, there's no exhale with a deep breath. But when you say inhale, an exhale seems to just come as a result. And you haven't said, take a deep breath.
Yes, I did. That's when your chest rose. And then I said, now we're going to allow a slow, silent, conscious, loving breath.
But the word inhale seemed to...
I never used the word.
Did you not?
Inhale. Okay. Exhale when you're ready. Now allow a loving breath. So why would I want to relegate myself merely to an inhale when that is so much more eloquent?
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel it's more complex?
Definitely.
Yes.
But
you had a question here, and I'd like to sort of address it about three-dimensional, etc. Is that okay?
Yeah, yeah.
I understand what you're saying intellectually. But part of the human condition is we're not connected to any of that. Our breathing patterns are what our breathing patterns are, whether we're in Tokyo or Delhi, because we're human beings. We have the same tongue and jaw tension. We have the same sense of inadequacy and fears. And one of the things I so respect and appreciate about my work is it's part of the human condition. We all process pretty much in the same way. Doesn't matter whether we're in Lapland or New York, because we're human beings. We have the same preconditions, the same sorts of behaviors. They may be modified differently because of culturation in different societies, of course. It's not necessarily one size fits all in that regard. But what I'm teaching here is that we are not our behavior. That may be how we behave, but is that who we are? So whether we're speaking Farsi or we're speaking Japanese, I want us to be able to tap in to who we are and not be relegated to our behaviors because we didn't know we had an option. Because I'm teaching here, and it's really a fundamental understanding, that every single thing in life revolves only around two things: to choose to do something or to choose not to. It may sound simplistic, but think about it. All I care about in vocal awareness is, does that choice empower me or disempower me? Even in abdication, we make a choice by walking away. So I'm awakening us to possibilities we've been completely unaware of. When we are infants, we are egoistic, not egotistic. We are the center of the universe. Everything revolves around serving our needs. Great artists, great athletes, in performance moments, are completely egoistic. It's only about them and their success. Just like a newborn. I write a lot of speeches for students of mine to deliver at events like Hall of Fame ceremonies. And I recently wrote one with the concept, a champion does it differently. And went on to explain that the word champion is not a sports-centric term. The root of the word means dazzlingly skilled in any field. I couple that with another critical word, audacious. When I turned 72 years ago, one of my students who loves basketball gave me a book called The Audacity of Hoop. And the cover picture is President Obama in the Oval Office, coat and tie, holding a basketball behind his back. And it is his presidency and life story through the prism of 3-on-3 pickup basketball. And I asked a couple of my basketball students at the time about 3-on-3 full court and said, if you're playing 3-on-3 full court, that's intense. That's physical. And so John, in his note to me, said, thank you for introducing me to the audacity of voice. And I said in response, John, to be audacious, we first have to believe in our own possibility. And then you look up the word audacious, which means courageous, bold, fearlessly daring, intrepid. So it connects me to another thought. In vocal awareness, the art of surrender. Meaning to yield or to give back. To be in service. I'm Jewish. My wife is Catholic. I share that because a number of years ago, I live in my deeper listening all the time to the best of my ability. We were at Palm Sunday Mass before Easter one year, and listening to the Passion yet again, I went into my own space. And what emerged was the concept of serve, soar, surrender. And that became part of my daily mantra for several years, until one day during the High Holy Days, in the Jewish calendar, the most solemn time, Yom Kippur, falls during the High Holy Days, I realized I had the order wrong. It is not serve, soar, surrender. It is surrender, serve, and soar. To feel this level of empowerment, this level of command, this opportunity for this profound a choice to be there for ourselves this indefatigably, claiming who we are without approbation. Who am I going to get permission from? Several years ago, I had the privilege of meeting one of the most profound people I've ever known, a man by the name of Reb Zalman Schachter. Rabbi Zalman has passed away a few years ago, but one of his close friends was the Dalai Lama. These were the circles he moved in. He'd probably ordained hundreds, if not more, rabbis around the globe over his 80-plus years. And I was teaching at a university in Boulder one weekend, and our eldest son informed me that the rabbi lived there and I should go meet him. So I got his number from the university and left a message on his home phone. And he called me back and we chatted for a couple of minutes and he said, "Too busy to see you, but good luck." That Friday night I walk out and his wife is in the front row. That Saturday night I'm at their home for dinner. It's the rabbi, his mother-in-law, his wife, and me. But before dinner, he invites me into a study to study me. And I said, "Rebbe, this is inappropriate. I'm here to sit at your feet." And he said, "I know your work, and I'm studying your vibration." He said, "Evil is so entrenched in the universe, it can't be confronted head on, but only in the vibratory plane." The Maharishi had a goal to have 1 billion meditators on the planet to shift the vibration of the planet. I want to have 1 billion people doing vocal awareness. We don't just drop a rock in the water and it sinks to the bottom. We drop a rock in the water and it sends concentric rings across the surface of the pond, touching everything it comes in contact with. What is our voice? It's vibration. It's energy. I'm 72 years old, and this is the most dangerous time since I've been alive on my planet. And it's really come to a head, obviously, over the last 2+ years because of this obscene man who is the President of the United States, who debases language, who through the power of his bully pulpit name calls, and in this virulent mindset of his, in this completely arrogant, egotistical, the world according to me perspective, is usurping the power of millions and giving permission to other demagogues around the world that it's okay to speak like this, to treat other human beings like this. So we see a rise in xenophobia. We see a rise in anti-Semitism everywhere. So I am awakening us to this reality because we've abdicated our responsibility. We allowed this man to be elected because 40% of the population vote in this country or thereabouts. This midterm was completely different because people are beginning to wake up. But already serious damage has clearly been done. So I want us to, there was a movie, I believe, 1988, the movie Network. Really cool movie written by Paddy Chayefsky. And the running theme throughout the movie was the protagonist saying, "I'm mad as hell and I don't want to take it anymore." And you see him in New York lifting up apartment windows, shouting out at nobody, "I'm mad as hell, I'm not going to take it anymore." Well, clearly I'm apparently doing the same thing. Awakening us to our responsibility. Because everything in life revolves around two things: choose or don't. Heretofore, we've chosen to abdicate. Now we have to choose to invigorate, to deal. And clearly people have begun to. There are movements awakening all over the world. Now we have to sustain them. Because it's real. We have to call out demagoguery when we see it, when we know it for what it is. My job is to help us understand how collectively to integrate our energy through the power of voice, through the quality of a breath.
We live in a world, we have created a world that is a world of distraction and a world of reaction. So we live, I'm using the term we, I'm just using it collectively. We live in a world where we're completely distracted by jobs, by relationships, by friends, by this constant reaction to earn more money, to achieve more. We then have the tools to react. So to your example of Trump, using Twitter to react in the moment, rather than, there's no taking a deep breath, it's just constant reacting. But going back to the environment, we're constantly adrenalized because we're so stressed out. So there is no relaxed, loving breath. It's a rushed breath. What precedes this?
What a thoughtful inquiry. Thank you, Chris. We live in an age I call the fingers and thumbs generation. We are losing the art of public discourse. You could be riding in the front seat and somebody in the back seat is texting you. Instead of just opening one's mouth and speaking. In this fingers and thumbs generation, we're losing the art of eye contact. We control emotion. I'm forever telling our youngest son, texting is texting and is not communicating. He's not listening, but it's his prerogative, because when you text, you control the flow of information. You control the emotion. I don't get to react in the moment. I have to wait for you to go back and forth, and then you may choose not to respond. But in real communication, we talk. And I'm not suggesting that is the best way. It's frankly, evolutionarily speaking, a feeble way. But it's what we've got in this time and space. One of the reasons I love singing so much is that sound is expressed emotion. When I sing, I access that emotion in a way I can't get to the spoken word. So there's a great gospel song from this country, late 19th century. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. How poignant is that? Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Says it very differently. So we access a feeling that we can't get to through the spoken word, which is one of my goals of a worldwide peace sing. Figuring if you can hold hands across America, you could sing songs around the world. So I'd love to gather millions of people at a given point in time and have me conduct them. I've done this in small versions, so I know we can do it, certainly with technology as it is today, globally. How powerful would that be? But to come back to this, because I wasn't digressing, I was connecting. So in this truncated communication style, where even typos are acceptable, etc., it proliferates in our verbal communication because we've tuned out. We're disconnected. It also creates a sense of separation. I don't have to touch you. I don't have to look at you. I don't have to engage with you. I call myself the Cro-Magnon man of technology, so I'm the worst person probably to have this conversation with. As humiliating as this will sound, I don't even know how to cut and paste. But I do know how to type really well. And I share that because clearly the computer has changed the world for the better, but with it comes serious challenges. I loved the play maybe 50 years ago, Inherit the Wind. It's a brilliant play about what in this country was called the Scopes trial, where a teacher in Mississippi was imprisoned for teaching Darwin's theory of evolution. True story. And part of the narrative is, with progress, you came to this country from the UK, not by paddling, but by flying in a plane. Now, how convenient is that? But look at the pollution that it creates. So everything has positive, negative. We know this. So what I'm awakening us to in your thoughtful question, Chris, is to be mindful. To tune out at a given point in time. Disrupt patterns, which is why I have my 7 rituals. Which is why I created something called a mastery moment, which before I walk into a meeting or prepare to go into a situation where I might be uncomfortable, like a first date where I may be feeling a little anxious. Stop and stature, source, what's called CLB, conscious loving breath. 30 seconds of centering myself. Give me an opportunity to disrupt a behavior and claim something. So finding ways to recognize how not just to do better, but to be better. One of my paradigms is structure does not impinge, it liberates. Freedom without direction is chaos. Vocal awareness is all about form and structure. It's not just the breath, it's the quality of that breath. It's not simply sitting up, it's stature. Eliminate all white noise from your vocabulary. Like you know, I mean, I think. You know, I mean, I think. And it's all white noise. But we've been told if we don't fill that space in a conversation, we're going to lose our audience. Nonsense. Space has value. A song without a rest is not the same piece of music. It also creates thinking time. There's that breath, you see. When the body hears a truth, it recognizes you just inhaled. I know you think it. You said it. But we tend to say, I think, because we don't want to appear arrogant or whatever. But it's equivocal. But if we're not sure of our response, then we say, I believe. But never, I think. So these are structures that I create to help us claim a degree of awareness and self-correct when we notice. And it has nothing, we started out talking about perfect excellence, nothing to do with being perfect, but we have a persona statement that doesn't say sorta. It says, this is how I want to be known. What's that black dot at the end? Oh, period. Implied all the time. So I surrender to that ethic. This is how I want to be. But we don't know how. So in vocal awareness, I show us how. In the quality of a breath. When I talk like this, if I talk like this and you could time a read, I do this all the time, and I read a couple of sentences and sound really ridiculous in 4.2 seconds, whatever that sentence might be. Then I read it again a little slower, maybe 6.2 seconds. Then I read it, really sounded like that. And it's 8 seconds. Then I read it the way I want it to be delivered. And it's also, round numbers, 8 seconds. So it illustrates, it's an exercise that shows an individual. In communication, it's never how fast, rather how effective. Because of the fingers and thumbs, we all tend to speak like, and it's all lower cases, like an E. Cummings poem. It's just, you can't separate it's all the same. And so it's streaming, what I call streaming data. And if I say to you, watch my eyes. Voice is power. Vocal awareness is my passion. And I love helping human beings own their power through owning their voice. Versus, voice is power. And vocal awareness is my passion. I love to help human beings learn how to own their voice and therefore own their power. Now, the first one was okay, but the second one was better. Agreed?
Yep.
First time my eyes were disconnected. The second time I used my eyes to tell the story. So the metaphor is the mouth is where the words come from, but the eyes tell the story. It's a practice. So if we've got a PowerPoint presentation, we've got an important conference call, we just want to learn how to be who we're capable of being. Dropping that rock in the water, seeing the level of impact that vibration might have. These are tools. We didn't know we had these tools. I'm a singer. I look at music, it tells me everything to do. How loud, how soft, how long, what pitch, everything. We look at words, they're only words. They don't tell us anything visually. So one of the trademarked aspects of vocal awareness is visceral language, conveying the emotion of words. I teach us how to make voice visual. Now, in that sentence, what word was just underlined?
Visual.
You saw it, didn't you? And notice what other letter in that word is underlined when I say, I teach us how to make voice visual. What letter is underlined?
V.
Yeah, and you saw it.
Mm.
So I don't just say, it's really important you understand the significance of what I'm saying. That's how we talk, I understand. Rather, it's really important you understand the significance of what I'm saying. That's visceral language. And it connects to understanding and vocal awareness. In all verbal discourse, only 8% is language-based, generically speaking. Which means your listeners are only getting 8% of this from the words themselves. 92% is conveyed through the sound of my voice and body language. Even on a phone, even in this podcast, body language matters, because if I sit around doing this, you hear already my voice has just changed immediately. So I put myself back in my work, and you can, even as I'm getting back into stature, and I'm doing certain mental things here, my voice is changing. So visceral language, we put this in, we prepare. It's a performance in a business context. I teach leadership all over the world. I have an acrostic on leadership. The L stands for leading by example. I used to teach probably the number one motivational speaker on the planet many years ago. And I would disagree with his basic thesis. And I'd say, we cannot empower others. That's arrogant. But we can help them empower themselves. So the E in part stands for empowering, empowerment, ennobling, and embodying. So when I teach leadership, I teach us how not just to read about it. Oh, that's a really cool idea. I get that. But we don't. I teach us how to embody that. Because every aspect of what you've been hearing me share is trainable. People ask, what's my target market? I sell air. Everyone has to breathe and everyone has to communicate. A couple of years ago, I wrote a couple of articles, one for, I think, Entrepreneur, another were for the Huffington Post. One on leadership, can it be taught? And another on the imposter syndrome. I'm very good with language. And when you listen to this, I'd like you to get inside my language to have an empirical understanding for yourselves, because you're very devout men. You're devoted to your principles. You lead a peripatetic life in part because it's part of the integrity of how you see your journeys. I know this without asking. I presume I'm on track. And then part of it is to awaken us to our possibilities through your experiences. There's a 21st century version to me of Bruce Chatwin's work. Bruce Chatwin was a journalist from the UK, died a number of years ago, and a couple of his seminal books. One was In Patagonia, and another one called Songlines. And his thesis was he'd walk the length and breadth of a country and journal his walk. And fabulous insights and tales to be told. This is your storytelling. You invite strangers like myself into your world to share our stories. In vocal awareness, for the first time, maybe your listeners are being exposed to how to really tell a story, how to tell their story, how to embody that. And the joy, the empowering experience that could bring us. You explore mastery with everyone you work with, I'm sure. But today, I'm showing you what that means for me, and that we don't simply keep it over here in the dojo or in my recording studio or on the stage, because that's rarefied air. Most of us don't get these types of opportunities. But we all live a life. We go to work, we have families, we interact with other human beings. So vocal awareness is portable. Carry it with us wherever we go. So remember that stature, that conscious loving breath. Interrupt the pattern. Warm up a voice. Does a singer perform without warming up? Does an athlete compete without stretching? I just did one basic vocal awareness exercise called a yawn sigh. And you hear the resonance and the timbre of my voice change. Can't do that at the office, but I can do before walking in my mastery moment, called finding the hub of my voice. So again, shifting a pattern. I did a TEDx talk earlier this year, and the video's on my website. And I walked out and I had preset gauze in everybody's chairs. Because partway through the video, 18 minutes or whatever it is, you see the audience following me, gently pulling their tongues out of their mouths. Most complex joint in the body is the temporomandibular joint, TMJ. 56 moving parts right there. The jaw is capable of multiple thousands of pounds of force per square inch. The strongest muscle in the body per diameter is actually the base of the tongue. So that basic exercise releases all tension and stress just like that. I talk to you right now and I'm in vocal awareness. I'm doing everything just wonderfully. You don't know there's something awry. But now I release my tongue and jaw tension. And you hear how everything just changes again. We don't know that. We don't know right now. Your listeners don't know. I'm tightening my right shoulder. They still hear me just talking normally. But now I release my right shoulder. All tension is fear-based. Where there's fear, there's doubt. Where there's doubt, there's no divinity. Now I know part of the human condition is we tend to carry that luggage along with us on our journeys forever, but we don't have to, at least not as packed to the brim as it was maybe when we started out. So these exercises help us put us in touch, help us liberate ourselves. We do it in the privacy of our space. Then we walk out and we reveal. Earlier I was speaking about primal, egoism. This breath, this conscious loving breath, technically speaking is called an intercostal diaphragmatic breath. Who cares? But the importance of that notion is it is the breath of a newborn. So I ask you to allow a breath. I ask you to love a breath. And I return you to your primal state. And what's so fundamental there is that that breath never left your body. But part of the social conditioning is reaction. We're 6 months old and we're sitting in church, temple, mosque, wherever, being held by a loved one. One of the primal ways we explore our universe as an infant is through our voices. So we go gaga and goo-goo. And this person gently pats us on our back and says, shh. So we begin to shut down before we even open up, just to be acculturated. So I return you to a primal breath. I claim stature. And I take you back to this primal state volitionally. I used the word hubris a few minutes ago. Extreme arrogance, blaspheming the gods. Nothing to aspire to. But that champion, that great artist, in that moment of competition, performance, is hubristic. I am all about me in that moment. So in vocal awareness, hubris becomes a positive attribute without arrogance. To surrender to that notion of how I want to be known and to learn how day in, day out to claim that without fear and trembling. So I'm not teaching something new. I'm revealing what we've given away and taking us back to this primal state volitionally. Because as infants, we just were. Now I want us to undo and understand the choice that we have to do that very thing. And as I speak, please re-listen. And know that I'm not speaking to you in a pitch like this, for example. I'm still speaking very genuinely, but there's something awry. I allow my voice to be where it wants to be. Same pace, same dynamics, but fundamentally different. Notice I don't just talk to you in this monochromatic way. I can't do that. Why would I do this? But this is really how we all talk, because emotion is scary, connection is scary, all kinds of reasons. I got it. So this is what I do. But how dull, how flat is that? And what is missing? Look at the textures. There are none. So the moment I put myself back in the work, and you see my words, I have my breaths, not to manipulate, not to be perfect, not to polish my own apple, but because it's the most effective way to communicate, the most. A number of years ago, I had the privilege of meeting the Nobel laureate Elie Wiesel. He's passed away. He was a Holocaust survivor, won the Nobel Peace Prize. And as he began to speak with me, I began to sob. Not because I'm meeting a survivor or a laureate, but because the sound of his voice went in my heart and knocked me out. Just like when I listened to Glenn Gould play the Beethoven Appassionata, or when I was in an audience with the Dalai Lama, or I met one of my favorite singers on the planet, somebody I would love all your listeners to know, Thomas Quasthoff, Quasthoff. And I ask you to listen to him before you look at him. But I'll give the story away because there's a point to it. One of the most amazing voices, singers I've ever experienced. He's in his early 50s. Back in Leipzig, East Germany, where he grew up, and back in the 50s, they were testing a drug called thalidomide, a birth control drug. And he was born with severe deformities. Hands he calls flippers. Truncated arms with fingers dangling like this. Stubs for legs. Barely 4 feet tall. With full upper body, torso, and head. With a world-class bass baritone voice. And he has a really cool album called the Jazz Album. You listen to this cat sing, and you're listening to an American. Listen to some black jazz singer sing Gentle on My Mind. There's even a cool video of him doing that. Then you watch him sing Schubert. It's amazing. I go on about him because what did it take when he began his career for him to show up? The courage to be that type of champion. Everything in life costs something. Choice. Which price do I want to pay? His was to serve his art as impeccably as possible. So when I met him backstage at the Hollywood Bowl a few years ago, I shake his hand and I begin to sob, just like with Elie Wiesel and the Dalai Lama. Because the sound of his voice went in my body and knocked me out. am I providing what you want? Am I being relevant? I have no idea, because I'm just being me, but I want to provide value for you.
Very much so. I think that...
May I play with you?
Yeah.
Would you tell me that with a CLB, a conscious loving breath? Not a big deal. It's silent. It's slow and loving. Eyes on me, please. And at the apex of that inhale, say the same thing.
Very much so.
No, I wasn't quite done. I'm old and slow, so you have to inhale a little longer with me. It takes 5 seconds, actually. You ready?
Mm-hmm. Very much so.
Feels.
That was
Well, it felt totally different.
right. It sounded completely
That was
different.
only 2 seconds more. Isn't that interesting? You were
Wow.
about to say?
Very much so, because...
Now, do you notice not just thinking of words right now? I'm sorry for interrupting what you're about to say, but I want to make a point about conscious awareness. You're listening internally a little more to yourself. Self with a capital S. Am I correct, by the way?
Yeah, you are.
So it's not to edit, to censor, but to be mindful. So just because I created a trigger, a conscious loving breath, you tuned into yourself simultaneously. So now you get to more effectively embody the messenger. Not merely linearly state what you wanted to state in this more disconnected, ordinary fashion. So I shared that because I know how you strive to be in the integrity of your mission. So this is just a way to notice.
Thank you. We talk about movement, and I think we came to doing what we're doing through sport, physical pursuits, practices to improve ourselves. And there's often been a question of why people are doing things, and almost that it's a case of using the wrong techniques to get where they're going. So self-improvement, I need to go running every day, and they keep on doing it, but it doesn't quite get them to where they want to go. Sure, they can run for longer, but it doesn't translate over into their daily life other than willpower and tenacity and sheer bloody mindedness sometimes. So hearing you talk about voice really connects with perhaps just my search, but maybe there's something in it for everyone, that there are other ways.
Maybe?
I would definitely.
Thank you very much.
Um,
I'm not being flippant. I am being flippant, but it's important to claim something about what I'm saying. Not because I created and I'm the grand poobah, but voice is power.
And we seem to have given that up so
That's right.
much. And we hoped everything that we do inspires people to go, actually, where I'm at's not where I want to be.
And so part of what I ask people to do is create a vision statement. What is the contribution I'm here to make? I have a student on FaceTime after this interview, after this conversation, in Toronto. She's a very successful businesswoman, but reached out because she wants to move to the next level of her journey. And she didn't know what it was. So I'm helping her flesh that out. So we create a business plan, and we create our vision statement, our persona statement, our timelines. And we become really mindful. And I have all these different protocols that you're just recognizing this aspect or that aspect, and it all fits together as we choose to use this principle or that principle. But in my waiting room, we're in my studio out back of our home. In my waiting room is a picture from the Monterey Peninsula in Northern California. There's a world-renowned retreat facility in Big Sur called the Esalen Institute, where I taught for 15 or 16 years. And this picture was taken by the Esalen archivist. And it's the sunset and the first day of the winter solstice. And you see this amazing sunset through this natural rock outcropping.
We know exactly which one you mean, because, sorry to interject, on our first journey...
I'm sorry, wait. Don't want to just react, remember?
Absolutely.
So, stature. But no, we don't have to gear up that much. He's closing his eyes and getting centered like we're going to do pranayama or something. We're just... Now, what were you going to say?
On our first trip...
Now you let a little air out before you spoke. So keep your eyes on me this time.
On our first trip 3 years ago...
Here's more present.
Oh, yeah. It's incredible.
On our first trip 3 years ago, at the beginning of the 5-week trip that we went on, we found ourselves in Big Sur on day 2, on Sand Dollar Beach, exactly where that picture was taken.
Cool.
So as we both walked in, we both noticed it
How
and
lovely.
said, we've been there. We know exactly where that picture was taken.
And the metaphor for me is the only way out is through. I'm a tour guide, and I love helping people take the best journey possible. We're all here to make a difference. And so here you lovely men are doing your version of that. And you invite me into your space. What an honor. What a joy. Even Dodger is enjoying himself and wants to be part of it. But you don't get to, Dodge. Sorry. Any thoughts or sharings? Because as I said when we first sat down, I don't come up for air. Am I providing you with any value? I'm not looking for congratulations. I really want to be on point. See, now what you just did, Chris, was perfect. Hate that word. Was really wonderful. Because you self-corrected. Chris just started to speak and breathe in our habit, but he stopped himself to affect a more wonderful breath. So that self-correction is golden. And that's all part of this process of excellence, etc. When, now nobody's, I've just misspoken twice. Now I start again, and nobody is asking, why are you starting over? Did you have radishes for breakfast? Did you have radishes? Did you have radishes for breakfast? Why are you repeating yourself? Doesn't even factor in. But my self-correction creates a responsibility on my part to stay tuned in and not to leave anything dangling out there like some random participle. I want to be in charge of my communication. So that self-correcting is wonderful. Thanks, Chris.
There's obviously been many moments, I'm sure different moments for you, James, to me, that have really connected for me. Two that very much stand out. First of all, you said about your teacher who wasn't interested in dogma, and she allowed you to be yourself.
So now you have this big dogmatic teacher sitting in front of you. You see. By the way, for the recording, do you hear anything changing, James? As I'm in baseball, in the U.S., we have something called a third base coach who does these arcane symbols, sort of like playing that game where, you're interpreting through body language. And so I'm subtly sitting here talking to Chris as unconscious, relaxing your tongue, getting rid of some jaw tension. and you'll subtly hear a little more resonance, a little more fullness in the voice, a little better breathing, because my body language is conveying something to your unconscious that bypasses other neural pathways. Because what we're ultimately ending up doing in this process is creating new neural pathways. We're defining a new connection, quite literally. And we can prove this through spectrograph and breath analyzers, etc. So please continue, Chris.
Your teacher wasn't interested in being dogmatic. She allowed you to be your authentic self. It reminds me of a conversation we had 2 days ago, with a climber in Yosemite called Ron Kalk, who was a pioneer of big wall climbing in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, 70s to 90s.
And now he's in his 60s and he has a not-for-profit called Sacred Rock. And he brings children up from the juvenile prisons in San Francisco to Yosemite and brings them to nature. And he was recently questioned on the curriculum that he makes the kids participate in. And he doesn't have a curriculum. He allows the kids to be themselves. And via that, they're coming to their own awareness, their own healing process, because he's not enforcing on them something that he believes. Rather, he's letting them be themselves.
But in that process of they're going to scale 10 feet, there is technique and there is discipline. Discipline means teaching or learning. And so he's clearly a very wise man to understand for them to achieve anything that he wants them to do, they've got to get dialed into themselves and the courage that takes, ... Am I correct, by the way?
Correct.
So, how brilliant.
The two other areas that connected for me personally, you said that words were finite and infinite. And certainly in the past year of my life, I can really attest to that. And that's why I shed a tear when you said that.
One of the roots of the word pain is value. How wonderful that you are so connected.
So
Just take your time. Allow the loving breath. Feel source. Allow the loving breath. Just take your time, Chris. That's still too fast. Our breath is healing. I'll help. Stay with my face, Chris. Let's do one more.
So I could really understand the value of the words that you spoke.
You feel safer right now, don't you?
Yes.
I said a breath isn't only physical, it is also emotional. This conscious awareness, this immense respect for the integration of source and self, it exists. We just are not often capable of making that understanding connect. So we tend to live in this sort of parallel universe where we can live like that. Now, that was a vulnerable moment for you. But I counsel that I never want any of us to be vulnerable. Because to be vulnerable can put us in jeopardy. However, I do counsel us to be open. Because to be open can put us in touch. You allowed yourself to be open. Because when we shut down to keep out the pain, we keep out the joy. Comedy tragedy symbol. It's like taking antibiotics. It eats up the good guys and the bad guys. So we shut down, we protect. We actually put ourselves in greater jeopardy. So that's very courageous what you've just shared with us. Thank you.
Thank you. Running alongside that, James can attest to this. I certainly rush my words, and I certainly rush.
Past tense.
I rushed.
Yeah, I used to do that, but I'm not going to do that anymore.
And so I mispronounce. I don't finish sentences. Yet I have an immense desire to be more conscious of my words. And certainly the experiences of the past 6 to 12 months have really highlighted that for me. And I become completely unconscious when my emotions run out of control. And I'm not stopping to consider what it is that I'm saying. I'm reacting instead of responding.
We tend to feel very self-conscious a lot of the time. The 7th ritual of vocal awareness, the point of the work, is be myself. Now you see that, I'm sure, as 2 words, be myself. But it's actually 3 words in vocal awareness. Be myself with a capital S. And notice again, it doesn't say present, it says be. When I speak about the 2 greatest fears, just allowing the size of that. Can you imagine what we could accomplish if we felt the sanctity of that moment? The authenticity of that moment. I've been teaching a really long time, as we know. But in this day and age, my vision is to change the world through voice. That's my mission. I can't do that by myself in my sweet little studio. And I can only do it through the benign grace of fine people such as yourselves, where people get to hear this all over the globe. Because I'm enlisting people into what I call the human achievement movement. I don't believe in potential. I like achievement better. It helps us realize our potential. So I would love people to sign up, committing to being their best and accepting when we can't be. Because we all make mistakes. We're human beings. But vocal awareness has been my scaffold for helping me erect me. And it's not built on a landfill. We've got these big beams stuck very deeply into solid ground that is not going to slide, crumble. So as we identify this is who I am, and each day we go in and we allow a conscious loving breath, 7 minutes, 30 seconds. These are not huge expanses of time. Little by little, I claim. One of my favorite outdoor sports, I haven't done it for many years though, is whitewater rafting. If you ever want to invite an old person on a river trip, call me. And I was on a class 5 a number of years ago in a little idling portion of the river. And on the right bank, there was this huge boulder with a branch growing through the center of this boulder. It had cracked open this giant granite rock. How many millions of years did it take for this branch, buried at the bottom, seeking light, to penetrate that rock? Well, that's what I'm trying to do on my journey, is to awaken us to that light, to our possibility. And it's not about whether it's arduous, how long it takes. Choice only matters as how badly I want it. My mother was my hero. She passed a number of years ago. And my door is being knocked on. Since we have no editing, yes, dear, my bride just came in.
I just wondered, how long are
We're
you?
recording,
We wondered if you needed to talk.
and this is live.
Goodbye.
So the whole world just heard you. This is my beautiful bride of almost 50 years, Rebecca. This is James and Chris.
Hello, Rebecca.
I apologize. I knocked.
I know.
I thought you said come in.
I had no choice.
Oh, adios.
God bless you. So you just take notes.
I've taken a lot.
Thank you, dear. Was it helpful?
Yes.
Good. We have a tech guy here helping us. So I don't want us to think about time, difficulty. All that I want is how badly we want it. My dear mother, rest in peace, was my hero. I never had a father. We all have our own journeys. I never had a father except for the 4 seconds or whatever it took to create me. And we subsisted throughout my childhood, barely above the survival level. And I'm 4 years old. I'm 2 years old. My earliest recall is 2. My mother takes me to see a ballet movie called The Red Shoes. It's in the National Archives, one of the greatest movies of the 20th century. And it's a ballet movie. My mother liked film. It was a place to escape. Who takes a 2-year-old to a ballet movie? And at 4, don't know where the money came from, we needed to eat and pay rent, she drags me into an accordion studio. Her hand was on my wrist. I was a tad reluctant. Forced me to sit in that chair, and Jack Farragon, the accordion teacher, put a 3/4 size accordion in my lap, and I was morphed. I'm sure I've dramatized it over the years, but I felt a very visceral connection. Unfortunately, I didn't turn into a cockroach like Gregor Samsa. I was metamorphosed into music. Where did that image, where did that vision, where did that courage for my mother come from? Because that act changed my life. So I share this story because I want to awaken us. I don't want us just to turn the page. I want us to stop and reread that paragraph. I want people to listen to this and stop and really listen. Maybe commit to, I'm going to do this for a week. After the week, maybe sign up for another 2 days. Or I have this meeting coming up or an important job interview. I'm going to try a couple of things that Arthur suggests. Helping us claim who we're capable of being is my journey. The 2 greatest fears are what I say they are. Fear of abandonment and claiming my power. What prevents us? No one can harm us. But we can allow them to harm us. They can only do it when we allow it. No one can take our power, but we can give it to them on a silver platter. It is not a level playing field out there. I wrote an article for Huffington after the third presidential debate, and I said Hillary broke the glass ceiling for women. Boy, was I wrong. She was extraordinary in that. He was despicable. But it's a good old boys club. And they're talking about her pantsuit, but nobody's speaking about his language or his ignorance, his arrogance. As you may know, he actually lost a popular vote. But in this country, we have this unfortunate electoral college, so you can win X number of states and still win the presidency, even though you've not won the popular vote. And I don't believe in it, but it is the law of the land. So I really want people to hear how real this is. This is our life. These are our daily lives. We make our living through how we communicate. We live successfully or unsuccessfully through the way we interact or disengage. When we say trapped in the white noise, the fears, there may be legitimate reasons, there's no question. But we don't want to abdicate, because whatever events happened in our lives, perhaps as children or X number of years ago as adults, that was there, but it still has dominion of us, over us here. And I don't want to minimize any of this. And one of the reasons the first ritual is to say thank you is because this work opens us rather quickly. But things do go bump in the night. I had a woman in this room many years ago, a renowned actress, very low voice. And in this one lesson, she was standing over near that break front, and we were vocalizing, and a force, I don't know how to describe it, I'd never had this experience any other time, forced her into that break front. And there was a stench in the room, not from flatulence. I have no understanding of it. And she picked up over 1.5 octaves in her range in that one lesson. It's as though something were profoundly released. Leading a sound meditation on the top of the Pyramid of the Sun on New Year's Day in Mexico City. We were in a circle, and I'm observing there's tension in the circle. And I opened my eyes, and I observed somebody going into catatonia. And so we kept the chanting going and the breathing going, and I just gently worked with this individual. Because they were moving to a state of ecstasy, and they didn't want to come back from that. So the mindfulness, the conscious awareness. So I always begin with thank you, because that puts sanctity in the space. And we don't just pay lip service. You saw me correct the quality of a breath. We don't rush through it, because we're reframing, we're rewiring. And I want us always to feel safe and sacred within our own space. This is, after all, empowerment through voice. I can't empower you, but I'm passionately committed to helping you empower yourself with a capital S.
Thank you, Arthur.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, James. You're so gracious and kind. When we sat down, you said an hour, hour and a half, and I said I don't come up for air, and you let me speak for 2 hours. I certainly hope I haven't overstayed my unedited welcome. Dodgers chiming in.
It was important. It is important to both James and I to create a space where the people that we talk to can share whatever it is that they need to and want to share. And there shouldn't be a limit.
Well, all I
that.
wanted is to create value. So that's all I care about. Does it serve your mission, and does it help your listeners? That's all I care about. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
God bless.
Thank you.
Enjoy our Thanksgiving.
Yeah, very much looking forward to it.
Don't eat for 2 days prior.